What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking the simple yet divisive question of what is the best draft spot for this 2020 fantasy football season. Now, a quick announcement before we get into it. Go ahead and check out our all new and updated website at alldaypigskin.com. It's got everything that you see here, the videos, articles, along with a place for you guys to go ahead and purchase our 2020 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Go ahead and check that out at a great price. You get everything from top 150 overall player rankings, standard PPR formats, along with individual player bios, tiers, projections. On top of that, you get general fantasy advice, breakout bust candidates, so really great value. All the details are in the description. And again, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Join the newsletter, sign up, get all the perks. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Now, before getting into this topic and giving you guys our take on what truly is the best pick to have for 2020 fantasy football, we want to go ahead and preface this question, break it down a little bit, because look, first and foremost, we're not saying that you specifically need one pinpointed draft spot, and otherwise, if you don't have it, you're not going to have a good team or a good draft grade. No, you can absolutely put together a great team no matter where you draft. And on the flip side, even if you have this optimal draft pick, and then on top of that, you make the best pick on paper, well, something like an injury or a suspension can screw up your entire plan just like that. So we recognize all these things. Truly, what we mean by best draft spot is simply that you are in the best theoretical position to have your choice of elite player available. And this isn't only in the first round, but in the next several as well. And sure, there's some wild, unexpected picks that happen every single year. So again, we recognize that things can change in the blink of an eye. But as far as situations where things go more or less per the big board and acceptable rankings are followed, our advice will apply. And let's quickly use 2019 as an example. It just happened. And for the most part, there was consensus on what the best pick to hold was, and that was an early first round selection, picks 1 through 4, because then you had that choice of elite player, whether it's McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke, you get the point. And again, we're not saying that if you didn't end up with one of those guys, you couldn't win your leagues. No, obviously not. But hey, guess what? If you added a Christian McCaffrey to a league winning team that didn't have him, well, imagine how much easier the regular season, the playoffs, and the championship would have been for you. That's the whole point here. And we also want to address the fact real quick that in nature, this is a question and answer that's going to change every year, because in 2019, one thing might have been true, in 2018, another, and then in 2020 and further on, something else, because every single year, the pool of players changes that are available, whether it's due to injuries, due to retirements, due to the NFL draft with new talent. Those are all factors that we have to consider. So for that reason, we're addressing this, and even more so because we think 2020 is a unique year compared to what we have seen recently. Now, before giving you that consensus of ours, let's go ahead and real quickly, break down the first round in terms of start of the first round, middle of the first round, end of the first round positioning. As you'd expect, the start of the first round, using an example, picks 1 through 4, then that would make it a 12-team league. This is usually where people are saying this is the no-brainer choice. This is the pick that I want because then we can have that elite player that we have mentioned. And examples the last few years, well, these are the guys like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, maybe even an Antonio Brown, and a few others. Now, the one downside to this is that you're going to have to wait a pretty long time to pick again, and you might be in a situation where you have to reach on a player that you really like, since they probably might not get back to you. However, knowing that you got one of those aforementioned truly elite players helps balance this out. Now, kind of in similar breath, let's look at the end of the first round, because it's just on the other side of the extreme. Now, from what I've seen, this is usually, funny enough, the spot that people either love or hate. Because at this position, you have one of the final 3 to 4 picks, and by this point, the elite players are gone, and there's usually been a run on the premium position, i.e. running back. Flip side here, however, is you've got the quickest turnaround in between selecting your first and second player, so the drop-off in talent between those two selections isn't much, if at all. But, however, this faces the same problem as having that first, second, third, whatever pick, is that you're going to have to wait a long time. You might be in a position where you have to reach on a player after your first 2 picks initially. Sure, that makes sense. And finally, now let's look at that middle of the first round positioning, because sometimes this can be viewed as the toughest spot to hold since it's tricky to navigate as you're entering territory of having probably barely missed out on the available elite players. So you've got the pressure of starting the transition of selecting that next tier of guys. Now, on the flip side, if you want to look at it this way, unlike the start of the first round, the end of the first round, you don't have to wait as long in between selections, and your choice of possible selections won't be as depleted quickly as compared to the other scenarios. So your roster could theoretically be one of the more balanced ones. So knowing all this, let's finally get into our 2020 consensus. And we can tell you, after having done countless of mock drafts and analyzed countless of different player rankings, our belief is that in 2020, without a doubt, the best draft spot to have is in between picks 5 and 7. So basically, right there in the middle of the first round. And you're probably wondering, how in the hell did you come up with this range? Does it hold for all drafts, all league sizes? And look, answering the first part of that question, identifying the most optimal spot for 2020 specifically boiled down to one basic factor. Compared to other years, 2020 is shaping up to be the deepest in terms of elite fantasy producing options without a lot of production drop off, and specifically at the running back position. Now, let's look at specific examples, because right now as it stands, the current top 7 picks usually include the following names in no particular order, but they're usually Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Michael Thomas, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. And when you break this down, you start to see that having a wide receiver sneak into the top 4, top 5 picks is a big deal. And it's a reason why this domino effect is possible. But guess what? So is the fact that guys like Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook finally broke out last year and showed their potential to be tier 1 running backs. And this means that in theory, if you have a pick in this range, you're extremely likely to be able to land someone like an Alvin Kamara, a Dalvin Cook, outside of the top 5. And that is absolutely wild. And even more so if you're in a PPR scoring league. And as highlighted previously, this essentially eliminates the biggest drawback of having that mid-round selection, and then puts you in a great position to still land some pieces in the second and third rounds. Because not only are you going to have depth, but you're going to have that option of truly elite fantasy player available to you in the middle of the first round, which usually isn't the case. And let's use even further examples in the second and third round, because since you don't have to wait as long afterwards as if you were picking first or second overall, well, you can still probably get another RB1 in the second round. And if you want to go running back wide receiver, great. The trend nowadays is that it's running back heavy in the first round and at the start of the second round. So you could very well wind up with a DeAndre Hopkins, a Julio Jones, a Tyreek Hill by being in the middle of the second round and having paired him up with an Alvin Kamara or a Dalvin Cook. Then in the third round, well, there's still some wide receiver 1, RB1 type of players. Basically, compared to other positions, there's not that many that can say that they came out of the first 3-4 rounds with all of their picks being RB1s, wide receiver ones, tight end ones. Obviously it'll vary in terms of the inner tiers of those RB1s, whether they're high end, mid end, or lower end, but still, the middle of the first round this year puts you in the best position to do this, more so than any other year. Now, let's quickly answer the second part of that initial question, because if you're wondering, does league size matter? Does scoring format matter? Yes and no. Because admittedly, here we're primarily talking about 12-team leagues. Because if you look at 10-team leagues or smaller, due to those decreased sizes, naturally there's going to be a lot of teams with deep and top-heavy rosters, more than usual, and that's just because of the deeper player pool that's available. While on the flip side, in league sizes with more than 12 teams, you see that opposite effect, where there's going to be a quicker depletion of talent, which also throws a wrench into the equation. Now, as far as scoring formats are concerned, we like to think that half point, full point PPR formats, for the most part, can be regarded in the same breath. So this idea would hold true for both. Now, standard scoring formats are a little bit different because the separation between some running backs here lessens, and you've got more options at the most important fantasy position, along with some upper echelon wide receivers potentially dropping since they don't get a reception bonus. For that reason, if there was any place where we might say, well, this strategy of having that middle of the first round selection isn't true 100% of the time, maybe it's here, but look, that truth of having that middle of the first round pick still holds. It just adds to the fact that you can also be very successful by having a latter first round pick as well. It just adds to the options. But without a doubt, we still see the optimal position in the first round for your fantasy drafts in 2020 to be the middle of the first round, picks 5 through 7. And obviously, note that this is intended for snake drafts, doesn't include auction type drafts where draft pick positioning is not a factor. So with that being said, well, let us know what you guys think. Is this the case? Is this not the case from the mocks that you have seen? What do you believe is the best draft pick to hold? Where have you put together the best available roster? At what position? What does it look like? And what's your take on this? Along with any other fantasy questions you guys might have. And another quick reminder, check out the newly updated website at alldaypigskin.com. Go ahead, get yourself a copy of the 2020 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide as well. You can see all the information in the description or check it out online at the website. And if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. And in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.